I'm then going to put these sites into the context of the biodiversity opportunity map project that I've been involved in. So obviously that's a mapping project where we're looking at opportunities to both maintain the existing biodiversity resource that's within an area, but also enhance that. And then I will finish off by looking at potential methods that we can undertake those ways of improving the opportunities. So I'm going to start off with a great photo which was passed on to me. Here we go. No, I'm not, apparently. Ah, there we go. Yes. Right. So I'm going to move on to a great photo of the Leen Catchment. So this is looking out over the Leen Catchment from Bessel Country Park. Thanks very much, Rob, for this picture, which he sent me a week ago. This just gives you an idea of what the catchment looks like when there's a bit of a fog over it. Beautiful photo. Thanks, Rob. So just to set the scene and also put it into a geological perspective, the diversity of the Leen Catchment is incredible over such a small area. And that's because of the diversity of the geology underlying the Leen Catchment itself. So you can see from this map here, we have the limestones over to the west of the catchment. The blue and the orange is the coal measures, I believe, which are more of a neutral geology. And then we have the pink and the yellow over to the west and north of the catchment, which are the sandstones, creating that kind of acidic environment over to that side of the catchment. Running down the centre of the catchment, we have the River Leen with its alluvial deposits within the floodplain itself. And then the one thing that I haven't got on this map is the man-made substrates from the old mining industry throughout the Leen Catchment. So we've got the old pit tip at Hempsall Hall area, Bestwood Country Park pit tip, the pit tips around Hucknall, so one at Farley's, one at the now Limby Ranges site, another one down Wigwam Lane in Hucknall, and then moving further north, we've got the now Freckland Wood site and also Annesley and Newstead Country Park right in the north of the catchment. So we've got a very mixed geology and substrate, which leads to the diversity of the biodiversity within, or the nature conservation interest within the catchment. We also have a good diversity of habitat types within the catchment, and as a result of the BOM, we're able to show those quite accurately. So this shows the woodland resource within the Leen Catchment, and you can see that there's quite a large amount of woodland in the north of the Leen Catchment. We then have our acidic habitats, acid grassland and heath predominantly, and the biggest patch being up at Hollingwell Golf Course in the north of the Leen Catchment, but also patches of heathland and acid grassland around Bestwood Country Park, and also around the Newstead Abbey kind of area, but also where the sandstone curls around on this western side of Hucknall, a few acid grassland sites around there too. And then, as you'd expect, the wetland habitats are very much associated with the floodplain and the River Leen, but also some of the old colliery sites as well. And then we also have a well-scattered grassland resource throughout the Leen Catchment, with the grasslands of more calcareous nature in the west, and then neutral and acidic grasslands in the north and the east. So it's a very diverse catchment. I've also included the local authority areas because, again, unusually, this covers 4 local authority areas, and this, again, might have had an impact on the way sites are managed within the catchment as well. So we've got the city in the south and very urbanised area. We've got Broxtowe Borough Council along a thin slither along the western edge of the Leen Catchment, Ashfield in purple, and then out in the east we've got Gedling Borough Council. And then importantly as well in the Leen Catchment, which again makes it fairly unique for Nottinghamshire, we have a highly urbanised catchment. So much of the southern end of the catchment is within Nottingham, and also in the central area we've got that large urban small town of Hucknall. So obviously this has a big impact on the catchment, and also may have an impact on how we can manage the catchment in the future, because obviously there's lots of people who live in this area, and that is a resource in its own right. They all have gardens, so they can obviously impact on the biodiversity connectivity in this area in the future. But also there's businesses which might be able to fund some of the work that we do within the catchment, and businesses have premises, so they have grounds which they may also be able to manage in a more biodiversity friendly way, and this is the way we need to start thinking. Just looking at the wildlife resource within the Leen Catchment, this map shows in red the triple SIs. Yes, there's 3 triple SIs within the Leen Catchment. There's Sellers Wood, which looks like a little bit of a dinosaur type horse there. We've got Bulwell Wood, and then we've also got Limby Quarry, triple SI. We've got some local nature reserves as well, predominantly towards the city area, and they're all within the city. But also, all these sites are part of the local wildlife site system as well. And if we compare the coverage of wildlife sites in the Leen Catchment focal area to that across the rest of the county and city, we've actually got a higher density of local wildlife sites. So there's a good wildlife interest within this focal area, and that's beginning to pick up why it's been identified as a focal area, or one of the reasons. So let's have a look at some of the sites that exist within the area. And the reason why I'd like to look at these sites is because these are the important sites, and I'm by no means having a look at all of them. In fact, in my earlier presentation, I looked at different sites to the ones that we're going to look at now, purely because I've been sent so many photographs from people who are associated with certain sites that I'm trying to make sure that all of those, as many of those photographs are used as possible. So right up in the north of the catchment, we've got Newstead Abbey, which is a lovely and a really diverse site. It has the River Leen flowing through it. It also has quite large areas of acidic neutral grassland to the south of the actual abbey itself, and these are grazed by the Wildlife Trust's flying flock. And you can see also they've got some really nice mature landscape trees in there as well. But also this picture here shows some of the veteran species that of trees that are also around the car park area at Newstead as well. And associated with that site is the black oil beetles that were found a number of years ago at Newstead Abbey. Haven't been recorded recently, but there has been 2 different sites where these have been found. This local rarity has been found at Newstead Abbey. So these essentially these sites are really important because they have that quality habitat that enables and supports our diversity of species within them. So they're incredibly important. Another example is the trio of sites managed by Knox County Council. So Newstead Old Coal Stocking Yard, Limby Trail and Freckland Wood. This is a picture, well, the main picture is showing the Newstead Old Coal Stocking Yard, which is a lovely site, particularly important for its butterfly fauna. So we have grizzle skipper, green hair streak, dingy skipper, and a number of other brownfield butterfly species present on the site. We have reptile species here, so commonly seen are grass snakes and common lizard. In fact, in this network of sites, we see those species. And Freckland Wood, which is a restored pit tip with rather lovely wide rides, is developing into a really nice area of woodland with really interesting grassland in these wide rides, supporting, as I say, nice array of butterfly species. And then further down to the south, we have the linear sites coming out of these 2 sites with the Limby Trail, which has and supports its own calcareous grassland communities. So again, that diversity which allows us to support this reservoir of of interesting species which possibly wouldn't be supported in the wider countryside, which is more of a farmed environment. If we move further south, we move into Bessel Country Park and the Mill Lake site, now managed by Gedling Borough Council, but previously managed by Knox County Council. I used to work there 20 years ago, know the site very well. This site is an incredibly diverse site, an incredible site. This shows you Parkside pasture. This is Park Road or Park Lane, can't remember which one, at the bottom here. And this is Parkside pasture, which is a neutral grassland, but there are also areas on the site of acidic grassland. There is also the old sand quarry, which is just behind the woods here, which supports a developing lichen heath. Also areas of scrub, which are so important for wildlife, including the broom and gorse scrub that are typical of the sandlands of Sherwood. Also areas of ling heath as well are developing on that site. Then this is the start, just in this right hand corner of the screen, the start of Big Wood, which is an area of ancient woodland with a large number of veteran trees, which is another great resource, obviously supporting some key invertebrate species. It's also said to be, Bessel Country Park, one of the best fungi sites within the county. Now, whether that's true or whether it's because it's so close to the urban areas and really well recorded, but it does have a longer species list for fungi than any other site within the county. And this is an example of some of the fungi that can be found at the site, which are some of the earth stars which appear across the site in the autumn. We've also got the pit tip site with its thin soils. It was actually a really bad, one of the first pit tips that was restored in Nottinghamshire, and it was restored really badly, which is a benefit for wildlife because it means the soils are really thin, and that means we end up with some fairly nutrient poor but species rich grasslands developing on the top there. And this is an example of one of the species that can be found there. This is common centauri, normally pink, but this is an albino version of it, very rare. And then also linking into the Leen Valley itself, there's a very thin linkage from Bessel Country Park down to the Mill Lakes site, and the Mill Lakes is a really nice complex of wetlands. In the north of the site, we have probably one of the best wet meadows, certainly in the Leen Valley, but possibly in Knox itself. And then to the south of the site, we have the biggest reed bed in the Leen Valley complex of sites. And moving it slightly further south, in the city, we have sites like Bulwell Hall. Bulwell Hall Park is again another incredibly diverse site. The picture shows the a calcareous rich stream that runs through the site and through the ponds in the site. There are a handful of calcareous streams in Nottinghamshire, so this is an incredibly rare and interesting resource. We also have at Bulwell Hall one of the best areas of calcareous grassland in the county. It's quite a small area, but it's incredibly valuable. I think we're down to less than 200 hectares of calcareous grassland now in Nottinghamshire, so again, incredibly valuable resource. The ancient woodlands around Bulwell Hall have an incredible ground flora and are well worth a visit. A lot of people know Woollerton Hall from the city, but I would recommend, if you don't know it, that Bulwell Hall Park is a place to go and enjoy nature conservation and well worth a visit. This is a picture showing a rare fungus. This came from Lee Scudder, who's into his fungus. He sent this to me last week. Never heard of a lacquered bracket fungus before, but this is only one of 2 sites where this can be found in the county. So again, hopefully I'm impressing on you how important these sites are, because they contain our reservoirs of species and also those rarer species that maybe wouldn't be able to live outside of these core sites. And finally, just to let you know, the River Leen, which runs throughout all of these sites, is pretty much a local wildlife site. So all the way through its length from north to south, even in the city where water quality declines somewhat, there are brown trout found throughout the length of the river. I even found them last year in the southern section of the River Leen, where you perhaps wouldn't have expected to find them. And this species here, this is a brook lamprey, which is found at the Mill Lake site at Bessel Country Park, which hopefully later this year we'll be investigating with some of our colleagues at the EA to find out actually how rare that is within the county. We think that at the moment that it may be restricted to just two watercourses within Nottinghamshire. So again, you can see the importance of these sites. And who's currently working in this area? Well, there's a whole raft of organisations working in this area. There's the local authorities, there's the government statutory agencies such as Natural England, FE and the EA. There's the wildlife charities, the Sherwood Forest Trust, Wildlife Trust, Trent Rivers Trust, etc., etc. But possibly more importantly, we've got a number of local groups working in this area as well. So we have Friends of Bessel Country Park, Friends of Moor Pond Wood, and the Friends of Newark and Annesley Country Park. And all of these organisations currently are focusing their attention on these core sites, these reservoirs of biodiversity resource. And you'll see why I keep hammering this message home when I turn on to the following slide. So this again just shows that we have a number of sites where we're currently working on these sites, maintaining that existing biodiversity resource. And apologies to anyone who did send me photos and I wasn't able to use them. I have tried to use as many people's photos as possible. So this is how those sites fit into the biodiversity opportunity map. The basis for the biodiversity opportunity map is that we create what are called habitat connectivity networks, looking at how our existing biodiversity resource is connected. And this is an example for woodland. So we do this for wetland, grassland habitats, and also for woodland habitats. We also have a subcategory in Nottinghamshire for acidic habitats as well. But this one that you can see on the screen is for woodland, and what we've done is we've run it through a model which we've managed to obtain from the National Forest Company, which helps us to run some habitat data through a GIS system to work out these particular maps. And I won't go into the details of that, but you can contact me later on if you want to know more. And basically, by running that data through the model, it shows the effective layer of connectivity of that particular habitat resource. So, for example, this map here, everything that has been given a colour of either dark green, light green, yellow, orange or red shows the existing woodland resource, but also where it connects through to other woodlands, or effectively connects through. So, for example, this is the woodland around Limby Ranges here, and this effectively joins up with the woodland across on the start of the Limby Trail and on the disused railway line that runs north from there. They aren't physically connected. There are gaps in between them, but based on the model, they are effectively connected to allow a suite of species that use woodland habitat to be able to move between them. They're close enough to do that. So you can see that the dark green block here forms habitat connectivity, and it's dark green because that habitat connectivity is above 250 hectares in size. There's actually two dark green blocks up in the north of the Leen Catchment. There's this one here, including Annesley Forest, and then there's this one here, which includes a whole network of sites from Limby Ranges all the way up to some private woodlands around Newstead itself. Newstead, I guess the old Newstead Abbey site, but in private gardens. So that's basically showing the connectivity of habitat. And when we take this map to the biodiversity opportunity mapping workshops, we ask people to look at what opportunities are there to improve the biodiversity within the current network. And we ask them about 4 ways of improving it, and these are all based on the Lawton principles. So in 2012, when the coalition government was in, Sir John Lawton was asked by the government at the time to go away and basically have a look at how we were delivering our nature conservation management at the time, because we were still seeing huge losses of species and habitats across the UK. Basically, to summarise this very simply, he came back with a report, Making Space for Nature, and he came up with 4 basic ideas. Where we have existing habitat, which is one of the things that we were doing well at the time, we need to make sure that we maintain it and make it better. So all the blue things here around our connectivity network are existing sites that we believe we need to make better. Where we can, we need to buffer those sites, so we need to make them bigger. So, for example, where a woodland is abutted by a hostile habitat type, so for example it may be arable land. Arable land is obviously fed with nutrients on a regular basis, so it becomes nutrient enriched. That is not good for a woodland site. Also, arable land is sprayed to control pests, and again, that's not good, because some of those pests may be, in a nature conservation context, really important biodiversity. So we want to buffer those core habitats, and in the example of arable land, we may want to create some buffer strips adjacent to the woodland, for example. And then the other key one is connecting into the existing biodiversity resource. So obviously, as I spoke about earlier on, some of these small blocks of red woodland that aren't really connected into to any other sites are very vulnerable. And the reason why we want to connect them in is, imagine those extreme events that are going to happen more and more with climate change. So things like drought in summer. In fact, last spring we had one of the warmest springs on record. Our wet winters that we're getting now with regular flooding events, the high winds and storms, all of these events could be sufficient to make a species become extinct on a site. Now, if that species extinction happens on one of these small bits of woodland that are red here, then there is very little chance for that same species to recolonise that site. We might know it's present on this site, but it can't make it across to that other site. So that's why this connectivity is so important. And basically, with the same scenario, that same species goes extinct where it's in a good network. It can then recolonise because luckily there's a good colony of that species in the southern part of that woodland connectivity, and it can make its way through and recolonise that site. We know it's suitable because it was there previously, so we know that it can survive on that site. And then obviously, if there's a chance to create more habitat, we'll always jump at it, but ideally we want that new habitat to go in the right place if possible to create better connections. And I'm going to give you a bit of a theoretical using the Leen Valley itself, but I'm going to give you a bit of a theoretical way and a close-up view of how that works in principle. So this is Aldercar Wood and Joes Wood, which is quite close to Newstead Village in the northern part of the Leen Catchment. And what we know about Joes Wood and Aldercar Wood is that they are both ancient woodlands. Now, for those of you who don't know the definition of ancient woodland means that the site has been managed as woodland or as our woodland since 1600. That doesn't necessarily mean that you've had the same trees on it during that time. It could be clear felled, and it could even be replanted with other species. So it could be replanted with conifers, for example, or it could be planted with a load of non-native species. One thing that we know about Joes Wood and Aldercar Wood is that they are ancient woodlands with an exceptional ground flora. However, the canopy layer and the shrub layer is not the best. So it's these were probably clear felled post-war, and they now have an even-aged roughly 60-year-old woodland in it, and probably 90 to 95% of that woodland is even-aged sycamore. So obviously we would like to improve that resource, but it is still a reservoir for species because we know it's got lots of unusual ground flora that are associated with ancient woodlands. So if we look at how it fits in into the connectivity layer, we can see that both those sites aren't very well connected to the wider landscape. So if you look at Annesley Wood over here, there's large areas of broadleaf woodland throughout Annesley Wood, and it also connects further south and also further west into actually a really nicely designed business area at this particular junction here, and then also further north. So there's a nicely connected woodland area to the west of these two sites, but they don't connect into it currently at the moment. You can see the extent of their connectivity. So where the model's been run, it's run outside of the existing woodland, but only slightly into the arable area. And as I say, this is a hostile area, so it's only searched slightly, and then effectively the search has stopped. As a species that might be trying to move from one woodland to another, it will move so far and then realise either it's made a mistake and it will die, or it will return back to its woodland home. So with these woodlands, how do we pick them out within the BOM opportunities? Firstly, we know we want to improve those woodlands. We want to maintain them because it's got great ground flora, but we want to improve them as well. And we'll improve them by increasing the structural diversity and also the species diversity to them. Secondly, we want to buffer them. And in this case, we want to buffer them against the neighbouring arable land. You can see these fields, these harsh environments. And that might be as simple as just putting in some field headlands with wildflowers. It might be that we can talk to the landowner and persuade them to provide a nice ecotone, which is like these edge habitats. So maybe create some scrub around the edge of the woodland. I guess that's all down to our discussions with the landowner. And again, buffering on Joe's Wood here in the south as well. And then finally, really for the improving the connectivity in these areas is the key. So connecting Joe's Wood to Aldercar Wood is an important aspect, connecting the two ancient woodlands through this particular parcel of land here. And it may be that the landowner doesn't want to plant trees on this land, but he may be open to, or she may be open to other options, and that may be beefing up the hedgerows, making the hedgerows more robust, making them grow taller, wider, so that species have a better chance of moving through those between the two sites. It may be that he doesn't want to plant woodland across the whole field, but he may be open to planting a few copses that create a stepping stone across there. It may be that he's happy to plant a few landscape trees through here to turn into veteran trees, which also have their own valuable resource. It may be he's happy to turn this to grassland and create a parkland. It may be that he's happy to plant an orchard in here. There's lots of options that we can discuss with landowners about how we can make these links, and the same here as well. But obviously making this link through to the existing broadleaf woodland resource here is really important, because then that just makes these sites a bit more robust into the future. So that's pretty much how the BOM works. Another very quick example, but with regards to wetland this time. So we have in the Leen Valley, the River Leen running down approximately down through the screen here. We have the Mill Lakes, Bestwood Country Park just at this point here. And then obviously the labelled sites of Paprika Dam and Moor Pond Wood further down the catchment. And you can see the current connectivity for wetland is reasonably good. There's a bit of a connection problem, but it's also connected by the River Leen predominantly, and we could improve that wetland resource down there. So first of all, through the BOM workshop, our stakeholders came in and identified the sites which need maintaining and improving. So obviously our stakeholders for this site and this site were probably from the Friends of Moor Pond Wood, who both manage these sites. Paprika Dam is a lovely area of wet woodland, and there's some lovely bits of wetland within this site, a nice deep pond which is good for toads in the south of the site, and then areas of wetland and marsh in the north of the site. At this site here, it's a really nice bit of wet grassland in this site, and this site actually is a nice area of developing wetland. It actually was formed originally from a bit of subsidence in the northern part of the site, but it's all developing into a nice area of wetland. And then we've got Bestwood duck ponds down at the south here, and then that area of wet meadow that I mentioned earlier on, that's part of the Mill Lakes complex of sites. And what we really want to do in this area is to create connections between those, or better connections between those sites. So you can see that as part of the workshop, some of our participants identified the need to create those connections through. And after speaking to someone earlier on this week, I may be a little bit incorrect about this, but as a 106 agreement made with this new development here, this area, I believe, is going to be taken over and managed by Ashfield District Council, which obviously gives us the opportunity to have a play with this area and create some wetland features to create a link between these two bits of existing wetland either side. And then, as I also understand it, there's a new development going in here, and this area, or part of this area, is going to be taken on by Gedling Borough Council, which again allows us to have a little play and do some habitat creation work in this area, and hopefully create better connections up in this northern part of the map here. Incidentally, this field here, going back to Derek Gow's talk earlier on today, his specialism is water voles, and he was involved in writing the water vole handbook, and this field here has some examples of areas where we've tried to improve the habitat for water voles in Nottinghamshire by basically extending the existing channel of the River Leen and creating a load of meanders in it. So that's quite a nice mention for Nottinghamshire in the water vole handbook.
Chris?
Hello, am I overshooting?
Just a little bit. It's 36 minutes past, so we've still got some time, but you're almost at the end anyway, so don't worry.
I am, yeah. This is my last slide. So basically, how are we going to do this? This is the big thing, and obviously a lot of things are in flux at the moment with regards to paying for biodiversity creation works. But I've just listed a few examples here. So at the moment, the agri-environment scheme for England is changing. So we used to have HLS and ELS, and also countryside stewardship, and we are now going into a non-European funded new scheme called ELMS, which I think Alistair referred to earlier on today. He was suggesting that ELMS 3 was going to be called the Landscape Recovery scheme, and that was going to help with funding some rewilding across the country. Well, I think I'm referring to ELMS 2 here. So this is basically allowing landowners to talk to Natural England, who will administer the scheme, and I think it's going to be a bit more flexible than in the past. So there's options for landowners to talk about the potential options that they can undertake on their land to help to improve the environmental impact of their land. So it's things like improving air quality, improving water quality, but also importantly from our point of view, improving the biodiversity and also the links between existing biodiversity resources. There's also opportunities in the near future with regards to tree planting. I agree again with Alistair. Ideally, we don't want to be planting too many trees. We want to be allowing natural regeneration of trees, because obviously natural regeneration creates much more robust woodlands in the long term, and also you're likely to get the seed source locally as well, and for free as well. So that would be the ideal. Spelt Forestry Commission wrong there. Apologies to them for that. And also the other benefit for the Leen Catchment is it sits within the Greenwood Community Forest, and the England Community Forest partnership with the 12 community forests have been tasked with creating a few thousand hectares of woodland over the next 5 years, and obviously the Greenwood Community Forest will be looking for sites to plant woodland on, and I'm talking with Nick Wirt about the potential to try and do that in a way that fits in with the BOM, so that we create habitat linkages when we plant that new woodland, or hopefully regenerate that new woodland. I think we are able to do a mixture of regeneration as well as planting with that scheme. Also, planning in the future will change with the new government legislation, planning for the future. And I think, I mean, I'm no planner, so I'm going to tell you the minimum that I know. But I think what they're looking at with new planning legislation is that without any large development, they will be looking to make biodiversity net gain through that development. So as an outcome from a new development, they will be looking to see 10% gain with regards to biodiversity post development. There's also local grants, things like the minor to major scheme within the Sherwood area of the catchment. And also, this is an interesting one, which is also a new development. The government's keen to create what are called nature recovery network partnerships, and at the moment they're just looking at this at a national level, but I think this will feed down to a local level or a county-based level at a later stage. We are just about to sign up to their national recovery network partnership, hopefully so we can find a bit more out about that. But the idea with this is that it won't just be a partnership of wildlife bodies, it will be all sorts of different bodies that will be signing up to that, and importantly it will be trying to engage with local businesses, as I talked about at the very start, in order to try and get business investment in ways of reconnecting the landscape for biodiversity.